All right, everybody, welcome to the 6th edition of the HOJ-cast. Hope everybody's having a great holiday weekend. Got a 9-pack of topics for you today. Here they are. First one will be Tyrese Haliburton. Second, Alex Caruso. Third, Conference Finals MVP preview. Fourth, our Logoman's the card of the Panini era. Fifth, Pascal Siakam and his hobby his hobby movements of late. Caitlin Clark, the dueling one of ones that are currently at auction, and what her stats look like so far into this WNBA season. Some thoughts on why every sports card nearly is overpriced. Some musings on the question of would collecting be better if you were the only collector in the world, and then finally a cool Jokic nugget that's card related. Okay, so let's get started here because we have a lot to get through. First thing I want to talk about is the first thing you see on the screen, which is this idea of ranking Tyrese Haliburton. So on a recent Bill Simmons podcast episode, Simmons and Russillo discussed whether or not Tyrese Haliburton is a top 10 player, and Russillo, the great Russillo, rather definitively said that he is not, and I'm going to rebut that. X regularized adjusted plus minus, which is a stat provided by Jeremiah Sengelman, has Haliburton at, I wish he would number these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as the 6th most impactful player, tied with Victor Wembanyama. Both those guys are at a 4.6 for their regularized adjusted X regularized adjusted plus minus. This is just an impact metric, roughly approximating how much better or how much more a player contributes to their team's winning margin than an average player. So basically, Haliburton is worth almost 5 points per 100 possessions more to his team's margin of victory than an average player. Then we have box plus minus, which is a stat that's trying to measure the same thing on a per 100 possession basis, just uses a very different methodology to get there. Haliburton there is ranked 7th in box plus minus on the season. And finally, we have something called value plus minus, which is a stat derived from blending estimated plus minus, Darko, and a time decayed regularized adjusted plus minus with an additional adjustment. And that one has Haliburton in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th, right there, neck and neck with Victor Wembanyama again. So there are 3 of the absolute most robust impact metrics that you'll find, and the 3 of the most credible. And they all say that Haliburton is comfortably top 10, and maybe the debate is whether or not he can sneak into the top 5. Also, from a narrative point of view, Tyrese Haliburton hasn't lost a playoff series in years. So if you recall last year, the Pacers and Haliburton defeated the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. They defeated the New York Knicks in the second round. And then in the third round, in game 2, on the road in Boston, Haliburton got hurt and he was out for the season. So I'm not going to credit that series as a loss against him. And even though that series was a sweep, the Pacers were competitive. They held a lead in the final 5 minutes of 3 of the 4 games in that series. So I don't know what would have happened if Haliburton would have been healthy. And even if it was 0-2 going back to Indiana, would they have been able to tie it up and make that a series? I personally think they would have, but you never know. So Haliburton's 2-0 in playoff series last year, for which he was healthy. And then this year he's also 2-0. He again beat the Bucks in the first round. And then the second round, he beat the number 1 overall 64-win Cleveland Cavaliers. He and the Pacers beat them. And right now they're up 2-1 on the New York Knicks. 4-0 in playoff series. So whether you want to go with the narrative, like this guy's a playoff riser, or whether you want to go with the more grounded, larger sample, empirical offering that we have from the impact metrics, the all-in-one metrics, I don't know how you could say Haliburton isn't a top 10 player. All right, the next topic we have is the impact of Alex Caruso. So Oklahoma City's starting lineup has not done very well in the playoffs this year. Their starting lineup consists of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, J-Dub, Hartenstein, Holmgren, and Dort. And that unit has a net rating of minus 5.1 points per 100 possessions in the playoffs this year. And the team, when SGA is on the floor versus when they're off, it's 5.7 points per 100 better in these playoffs when Gilgeous-Alexander is off. The team is 1 point better when J-Dub is on versus off, and the team is 6.4 points per 100 possessions better when Alex Caruso is on versus off. Noting that all of these net rating measurements are with garbage time excluded, courtesy of Data Baller. And so that leads me to ask, what is it that's making the Thunder so much better when Alex Caruso, who is a bench player, not a starter, what is it that's making them so much better when he's in? And it's not just the playoffs that suggest that they are better with Caruso in, although I'll give you one more metric from the playoffs that does indicate this. In the playoffs this season, as measured by box plus minus, Caruso is 10th in the NBA and has the highest, when the number is bolded, that means it's the highest. He has the highest defensive box plus minus in the playoffs, 10th highest box plus minus overall. The only player who's higher on the Thunder is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And then in the regular season, hopping back to XRAPM for a second, Caruso is fifth, was fifth when Engelman stopped tracking these metrics at the end of the 2024-25 regular season. Caruso in his metric is fifth, contributing, just like Haliburton, almost 5 points per 100 possessions more to the margin of victory than a league average player would. So, Caruso is surrounded by Jokic, Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka, Giannis, Haliburton, Wemby, Kyrie, Herb Jones, Embiid. Very curious. He sticks out like a sore thumb, quite frankly, because he's not even a starter. He's not a starting player. He's a player coming off the bench. Why? Why does he have such an impact? Why is he registering such an impact with these metrics? And I think there's two different answers, or two primary different answers. I'll give the one that I like first, which is that he's allowed to get away with all types of levels of contact that, for whatever reason, maybe it's because of the defensive reputation of the Thunder, the defensive reputation of him. Maybe it's because of the style of play that the Thunder have in general on both sides of the ball. But referees determined that the contact that Caruso initiates does not rise above being deemed marginal, and it, in their estimation, does not disadvantage the opposing player, when those are two of the standards used to determine if contact should rise to the level of a foul. And a lot of times it doesn't. And so you can see, like, for example, Caruso roughly adds plus 5 points per 100 possessions value over an average player. So how could you get to that? Well, here's one way that Caruso can create that value coming off the bench. So let's say just for 3 plays in a given game, Caruso is allowed to commit contact in a way that dislodges the ball and creates a turnover. And it's contact that other players, for whatever reason, wouldn't be allowed to make. Just 3 times in a game. Well, each possession has roughly a value of about 1.15 for the average team. Each possession is worth about 1.15 points. Let's just round that down to 1. So Caruso is taking away, through the contact that's not being deemed a foul, he's taking away 3 possessions in the aggregate to a point total in a game. He's taking away 3 points from the opposing team. But that's not where the analysis ends. Then you also have to consider he's allowed to create transition opportunities. And so each transition opportunity, let's just say, it's much more efficient than a half-court opportunity. So let's just say for each transition, he adds a net half a point over what the team would have been expected to score if he hadn't done it. Pardon me while I take a quick drink of water here. So if Caruso is allowed to do that, then you get the 3 points of defensive value that he's created by taking 3 points away from the other team. And then he's also creating these transition opportunities, which are worth half a point of possession. So let's just call that, he's creating half a point 3 times for his team on offense and subtracting 3 points from the other team. That's 4.5 points right there. If he's allowed to do that just 3 times. And if he's allowed to do it 3 times more than the average player would be allowed to get away with it, that's your margin. What was his regular adjusted plus minus X was 4.8. So that's the difference right there. That's 4. I just showed you how you can get to 4.5 points of advantage created by that. So Caruso is something that I'm keeping an eye on. Okay. Topic number 3. Eastern Conference Finals and Western Conference Finals MVP previews. Now, why would you care about this? Because I don't think anybody cares about the award. Well, the reason why it fascinates me is there is a sports betting angle, but it's also been predictive of Finals MVP. So last year, Jaylen Brown won Conference Finals and then Finals MVP. The year before that, Jokic was Conference Finals then Finals MVP. And the year before that, Curry was Conference Finals then Finals MVP. So it's a small sample. This award hasn't existed for very long, but players who win the Conference Finals MVP have gone on to win the Finals MVP in the last 3 seasons. So we've played 3 games in each of the series so far. Let's look at the Eastern Conference Finals first. By the odds, Haliburton is a favorite at -140. Brunson is second at +185. Siakam is third at +650. And then Karl-Anthony Towns and Nesmith are at +2,600 and +5,000 respectively. And in this particular series, those odds are out of whack based on what has occurred so far in the series. So Towns has the most net points added in the series. I'm using the net points metric. This is from Dean Oliver. Net points is a metric that gets published after every game, usually comes out within 30 to 60 minutes after the game. It's published to ESPNanalytics.com. Anybody can go look at it. And the idea behind net points, it's also an impact metric. It's using the same stuff that the other impact metrics are using. It's just looking at play-by-play. It's looking at it's using adjusted plus minus modeling, and it's got some type of statistical prior. Oliver hasn't disclosed the methodology, but I think he's gestured at what I don't remember exactly where, but he's gestured at basically it's the same inputs. It's just his proprietary blend of them. And when you look at his results, like at the top level, it's pretty close to what BPM and XRAPM say, with some minor differences that are interesting. But anyway, I'm using this number because it gets published after every game. It gets published on a game level. And the idea behind net points is it's measuring how much did how much did you in particular contribute to the margin of victory, the margin of loss for your team. Excuse me for a second. Thank you. I had to clear my throat there. Okay. So on the net points metric, Karl-Anthony Towns is first in the series at +13. The big bulk of that came in game 3, and it came in the fourth quarter when Towns went off for 20 points in the game and helped his team claw back from being down 20 points earlier in the game. And so, yeah, you could have one stretch that can really impact your net points. And Towns was the difference in that game. I mean, there's a lot of guys who impacted that game, but Towns had the big difference with his incredible fourth quarter. And so he's got the most net points on this series at +13. Nesmith is right behind him at +12.9. And if you remember, Nesmith had a nuclear fourth quarter in game 1 that more or less delivered that victory over to the Pacers. And then Haliburton is a not so distant third at +12.4. Brunson is a very distant fourth at +2.3. So these odds are presumably taking into consideration some of the public and the narrative bias that surrounds the preconceived notions that people have coming into this series, and people not really paying close attention to what has actually happened in this series. And then also, I think there's maybe some expectation that as the series goes on, there's going to be reversion to the best players on each team, those being presumably Haliburton and Jalen Brunson, those guys rising to the top. And eventually, by the time the series is concluded, those guys will have proven to have been the most impactful players for each team. But I don't think that's going to happen on the Knicks side. I mean, it could if Brunson had like a nuclear game. I mean, Jokic had a game of +20, a single game net point score of +20 last round. So it is possible for a guy, I think several players have had, Kawhi had a game in the first round that was like a +14. Trent had a game that was like a +14. It's possible that Brunson could have just a monster game and leapfrog Cat, but I don't think it's likely. I think right now Cat has a sizable lead on Brunson in terms of impact in this series, but you can see that Cat's conference finals odds are, +2,600 and Brunson's are +200. Even Brunson's are even shorter than that. So something's a little out of whack there. Probably ends up not mattering, given that the Pacers have a lead and they have a home court advantage. But you never know. Karl-Anthony Towns is somebody to keep an eye on. Okay, let's go over and look at the West. in the West is a little more what we would expect. So after game 3, which was just an absolute bludgeoning for the net point scores for all of the Thunder players who were on the floor as the Timberwolves mounted their 40-point lead. But anyway, so the odds are SGA is the heavy, prohibitive favorite at minus 750. Then you have Edwards plus 700. You have J-Dub plus 5,000 and Randall plus 6,000. And Anthony Edwards, after that monstrous game 3, is in a comfortable lead in net points at plus 12.5. SGA is well behind at plus 6.1, and J-Dub is right there with him at plus 5.8. These guys have both had a comparable net points impact on this series so far, and then Julius Randle is there in 4th, lingering at plus 4.1, but pretty far behind at this point. The thing that's interesting to me is, once again, the gulf between SGA and J-Dub. These guys have both impacted this series in comparable ways, but SGA is the prohibitive favorite, and J-Dub is a long shot. So maybe that's assuming that, hey, is this series, maybe we get 2 more games in this series. Maybe we get 4 more games in this series. But over the course of this series, there's going to be more of a separation. SGA is going to stand out as compared to J-Dub, but maybe not. So once again, I think we have this really interesting dynamic where the guy who's perceived as the second best player is right there in the case of the Western Conference Finals with the best player on the leading team. And then the other situation, you have Towns who's on the trailing team, but he's way out in front of net points. Okay, let's move on to the next topic here. So I was scrolling Card Ladder's shop feature today, which is a really fun feature to scroll. I go up to the filters, and I filter to certain marketplaces that I want to see, and then I sort by highest price and just kind of see like what cards are floating around the hobby. And it's just fun. It's really exciting to me to see like some of the cool cards, the most valuable cards that are auctioning. But anyway, I was doing my scroll, and I landed on this card, this 2024-25 Panini Origins Logoman, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander 1/1. And it's a game-dated Logoman with, looks like the date is October of 2018, which would be his rookie season. So that's really cool. That might even be the debut jersey. I don't know. I haven't looked. It is him in his Clippers uniform. So it's a very cool card. But once again, it's another Logoman that just has an astonishing price tag on it. $24,000 for this Logoman. And the auction still has 3 days and 6 hours to go. And it just sort of got me thinking, there's a lot of jockeying among collectors for or jockeying's not the right verb. There's a lot of debate or discussion, conversing among collectors about what will be the card that defines the Panini era. Will it be the Prizm Black Finite or the Prizm Black? Will it be the Prizm Nebula or the Nebula in all of its iterations, whether it's Spectra or Optic or the Prizm version of it? Will it be the Kaboom and the Kaboom Gold and the Kaboom Green? Will it be the Downtown and the Downtown Gold Vinyl? Will it be the Gold Vinyl? Will it be the National Treasures RPA? Will it be the Flawless RPA? Will it be the Immaculate RPA? And I just think that from a price point of view, it's becoming clearer that right now the Logoman, and this SGA doesn't even have an autograph with it. It's just a Logoman card. And it's becoming clear that the Logoman is dominating the market right now, a bit to my chagrin, because I don't like the Logoman as much as I like other stuff. And my collecting preferences over the last 5 years, ever since it's even longer that I've been focused heavily on Panini era stuff, like 6 or 7 years. But my preferences have really focused on accumulating the Prizm stuff, Optic, Select stuff. And the rarest cards I can find from those types of brands. That's really been my focus, and some of the other cool brands too. Certainly a wider scope than just that stuff. But I've especially taken a liking to the Prizm Black. So I have the first 7 years, all 7 years of McCaffrey's Prizm Blacks. I've got 3 of the Jokic Prizm Blacks, lots of Select Blacks of Jokic, a few more of McCaffrey. I've got Mahomes rookie year first appearing base set Select Black. I really like the black. To me, the black 1/1 is what I think of first when I think of Panini. And whenever I'm scrolling like shop or sales results, the black 1/1s always catch my eye. But The Logoman. The Logoman is the one that continues to set prices that are just staggering. So a dovetail for that topic is this. So I was looking up. So this is the next topic here: Pascal Siakam prices and how they've been impacted by his Game 2 performance and another deep playoff run for him as a member of the Pacers. So I came across this sale. This is from the same set, 2024 Panini Origins, Pascal Siakam, Logoman 1 of 1. This one's dated November 28th, 2022. Siakam does not have very many Logoman. I was only able to find 2 different Logoman Siakam cards that had ever sold. A different one was an NT blockchain Logoman card, which sold for a little over $2,000 like last year. Well, this one went for 1,600. This Spicy P Origins Logoman. And I didn't touch on this when we were talking about the SGA. I'll touch on it now, though. The brand is Origins. This isn't a National Treasures Logoman. This isn't a Flawless Logoman. This isn't an Immaculate Logoman. This is Origins, which is a totally fine brand, but it's not normally discussed when the premier memorabilia card brands are brought up. It's usually those 3: NT, Flawless, and Immaculate. Origins, I don't know that I've ever heard a person mention it in the same breath as those other 3, but here we are. I mean, these cards are setting amazing prices. And for Siakam, just to give a little context on what $1,600 means to his market. So also, like last month before this playoff run started, but the same is true for the Origins price. His 2016 Prizm Gold out of 10, BGS 9.5, also for what it's worth, numbered 10 of 10. Some people maybe add a small premium for what some have referred to as the bookend serial number. It went for $900. So his Prizm Gold rookie year is $900, and then this game dated Logoman from Origins from 2024, so a 9th year card, goes for $1,600, and they sold within 10 days of each other. What's the better card? Is it the Prizm Gold rookie year out of 10, or is it this 9th year Origins game dated Logoman? So I'm blown away by what these cards sell for. Now, the other part about the Siakam discussion is how his market was impacted by his Game 2 standout performance, and not just Game 2, obviously, but he's building a career. He's an NBA champion. He's back in a deep playoff run again for the 2nd straight year, and for he's done it multiple times in his career. And prior to Game 2, his Prizm Silver PSA 10 was selling in the ballpark of $30, $38, $58, $49, and then somebody smashed bin, or maybe it was a best offer accepted, for $124.99. So the card more than doubled, nearly tripled in value just off that one game, and that impacts his card letter index quite a bit. So interesting to see how Siakam prices have played out. Up next, our next topic, Caitlin Clark's dueling 1 of 1s. So as we know from listening to the crossover or consuming other hobby content throughout the last week or 2 in particular, that Caitlin Clark has 2 different base cards in the 2024 WNBA Prizm set. She has card number 22, which shows her in an action shot, getting ready to launch her corner 3. And then she has card number 145, which is the one that I have displayed on the screen, which is a photo shoot with her holding a basketball in one hand and raising a number 1 finger, presumably for number 1 overall pick, with the other hand. And this card number 145 has 2 1 of 1 parallels in total. Same for the card number 22. The number 145, the photo shoot card, is the 2nd appearing card in base set. Both of the 1 of 1s, the black finite 1 of 1 and the gold vinyl 1 of 1, are at auction right now. One with golden and one with alt. Now, these both have a bit of time before they end, and it's going to be interesting to see which one wins out here, the Prizm black finite 1 of 1 or the Prizm gold vinyl 1 of 1. I'm partial to the black finite myself, and if I were a collector, I would prefer it. But if I were a collector and I were like just a real Clark believer, I'd try to get both of these probably. I don't know that an opportunity to get both of these would ever present itself again. So but it's going to be very, very expensive. Both are graded a PSA 9, by the way. And we'll just see. We'll see where these end. Now, the other thing I want to talk about with Clark is her performance this season so far. There is not nearly as robust of an offering of all-in-one metrics for WNBA players that the NBA has. And so, for example, I'm going to show you where Clark ranks in player efficiency rating, acknowledging that player efficiency rating is not an impact metric. It's just a production metric. It's synthesizing everything in the box score. It's adjusting it to league average. It's adjusting it based on efficiency and scoring, and then spitting out a number. And it's a useful number. It's an interesting number. It's just not measuring impact. And Clark is firmly outside of the top 20 in player efficiency rating. Now, you'll notice some of these players have only played like 20 minutes, 28 minutes so far this season. These are outliers. Basketball Reference doesn't let me filter those out. I wish it did. But even if you only included starting players who have played 100 plus minutes so far this season, Clark is still outside the top 20. If we go over to a metric that's trying to approximate impact, or more specifically, it's trying to apportion credit for wins, which would be win shares, or in the case of the WNBA, win shares per 40. Once again, Clark is well outside of the top 20. In cumulative win shares, she's knocking at the door of the top 20, and the cumulative win shares metric is nice because it filters out those players who haven't played a lot. Interestingly, Clark has half a win share so far in the season in her 4 games, and she has more defensive win shares than offensive win shares. 0.3 on the defensive win shares side, 0.2 on the offensive win shares side. Part of the problem is that her scoring is just not efficient. So her effective field goal percentage is like, league average. It's 0.492, which like falls right in the middle here of all these players. And her true shooting percentage is right on league average too, maybe a little bit above league average. But the difference between true shooting percentage and effective field goal percentage, that true shooting percentage takes into consideration free throws. She's a little bit higher in that, but again, she's closer to league average than she is to being in first place. So there's a little stat recap. Oh, one other thing I wanted to look at for her statistically was her on-off impact. And she, I believe, is at 0. Her on-off, is a 0 this season. Her on-court net rating is plus 10.7, which is excellent. So when she's like borderline, probably top 20 in that when you filter out all the players who haven't, really played a full workload. So there can be, small sample issues there. But her on-off is right there at 0. So that means that the Fever are plus, their net rating is plus 10.7, whether she's on or she's off. So just some stuff to think about with Clark. Very small sample so far. Most of the players have played like 4 or 5 games. All right, let's move on here as we get to the final 3 topics of this episode. How about this? I had ChatGPT make this image. This topic is every card is overpriced. And so this is further musings following up on the most recent crossover episode, where Josh and I spent 45 or 50 minutes going over PWCC Premier results from last Thursday night. And we didn't explicitly say this, and this is a bit of a generalization, but basically we felt like almost every card was overpriced. That was basically, as we would look at every set, we'd just be like, wow, that's overpriced. That's expensive. That's too much. And then I started thinking about it more. I started thinking to myself, well, isn't every card going to appear overpriced to every person except for the winning bidder and maybe the underbidder or a couple other bidders who are close? And here's sort of the rationale behind that. So take Josh and I, for example. We are market participants. We can bid on auctions, and all 169 of those premier auctions came and went on Thursday night, and we did not make the winning bid on any of them. I personally didn't even bid on any of them. So I'm already revealing through my actions, not yet having said anything about my sentiments or my reflections or my words, but just through my actions, I'm revealing that none of those cards in that auction were at a price that I was interested in purchasing them at. So in other words, to me, they were all overvalued. And if they weren't overvalued, then I would have bought them. So you can say back to that, well, that's ridiculous. because you only have one wallet. You have a limited amount of funds. You can only buy a very few number of cards relative to the millions of cards that are out there. And yeah, that's true. And I am very judicious with what I decide to buy, but that's the point. The point is there are very, very few cards that I would prefer to have rather than my cash. In other words, I feel like my cash is more valuable to me than virtually every card out there, with the exception of a few. And that's revealed through my decision making. And so you can imagine, if some of these cards got low enough, then I might buy them just because the value proposition was good, and then they would therefore, in my opinion, no longer be overpriced. But of course, every card's going to look overpriced to me. When I review sales and comment on it, I'm just reinforcing what my actions already said, which was the fact that I didn't bid and I didn't win and I didn't purchase any of those cards. I already said effectively that all these cards are overpriced. And now generalize that to the entire population of collectors. Each card only has one winner, has one underbidder, and maybe a few other bidders who are close. Everybody else has revealed through their behavior that all these cards are overpriced in their mind, in their behavior, in their sentiment towards that card. So this also sort of then ripples out to, and it's sort of like it helped me understand more why people will make these story posts and they'll say player XYZ, all these players are so overpriced, and the person's just being honest. Of course they believe that. If they didn't think that, they would be buying those cards. And so it seems severe to say, well, can't you be an observer who says, well, I don't want to buy it, but I don't feel like it was overpriced. And maybe you can thread that needle on some level, but there's going to be a conflict there, which is, if you didn't feel like it was overpriced, why didn't you buy it? And you might come back and say, well, I didn't have the money to buy it. Well, if you didn't have the funds available to buy it and you didn't move around other funds that you have to enable you to buy it, then you did sort of still signal that it's overpriced. And if you say, well, the card sold for $10 million, and I don't have $10 million, it's still overpriced relative to your point of view, because for whatever reason, whether because you can't or because you won't, you didn't spend $10 million on it. So that's I understand that thought's probably going to get some pushback, and it runs counter to common sense, but really think it through. It's really kind of drawing on the Austrian economics concept of revealed preference, and sort of how our actions can reveal things. But anyway, it's also sort of a comforting thought that, like, when you see people constantly barking that the player that you collect or the cards that you like are overpriced, I mean, obviously, yeah, they do think that. Everybody thinks that, except for the person who won. And so that's why I made this graphic. So you have the winning bidder who's very happy and they feel like they got the card at a great price because they bid it, because they revealed through their preferences that they would rather have the card than the cash. But everybody else who didn't bid and who didn't try to win that card, obviously they think it's overpriced. And then a few of them speak up from time to time. But yeah, that's a funny way and an interesting way to sort of think about every auction result and every price of every card that you see, setting aside some contingencies, such as, like, if a card gets listed for eBay for a steal and 10,000 people all would have bought it if they had seen it, but only one person saw it first, sort of setting aside those sort of outlier cases, virtually every card price that you see is overpriced in the eyes of every single person except the person who bought it, and the underbidder, and maybe one or two or a handful of other bidders who are really close. Which leads to a related thought here. There is one situation, and it did come up during the crossover, there is one situation where a person cannot bid on something, but not necessarily indicate that they think that it's overpriced. And that is the situation where somebody owns a copy of a card that's for sale, and then the card sells, and then a market price is realized, but then they keep their copy. So, like, let me give a concrete example. So Josh has this amazing, exquisite LeBron card, and he has a copy of it, and a different copy of it sold Thursday night. And so Josh has his copy. He kept his copy. A price gets realized. He still has his copy. So he knows what the market value of this card is. He didn't try to win the one that was on PWC's, or not, I'm sorry, on Fanatics, on the Fanatics premiere. He didn't try to win that one. by the way, I don't know if I've called it PWCC or Fanatics throughout this episode. That's just a relic of the fact that that Fanatics Premier used to be called PWCC Premier. But anyway, Josh didn't try to win it either. And so here's the concept. The concept is Josh is signaling that he thinks it's overpriced, given that he didn't try to win it. He didn't win it. But he's also keeping a different copy of it rather than selling it. So the act of keeping it, the act of keeping any card in my collection is me indicating that I would rather have that card than its market value. In other words, every card in my collection that I own, I purchase it effectively every day at its market price, because I always have the alternative of selling it at its market price, recouping those proceeds, and then distributing them in other ways. And that's true for every card in every collection. So if you have a card in your collection and you keep it at today's market price, you are effectively purchasing it at that market price, because you always have the alternative of selling it and receiving the cash proceeds and doing other things with that cash. Now, it's not that clean, obviously, because we have to discount the market price somewhat there, because there are other extraneous factors that sort of impact that decision. So, if I have a card, I have to bake in the fact that there will be some level of fees associated with selling it, and it will take my time to, orchestrate the sale of it, and I have to ship it or deliver it and so on. So there's these little things that sort of additional costs that don't make it a perfect one for one. Like, oh, I can just snap my finger and I can turn this into cash. No, there's some friction. There's some extra costs associated with it. But effectively, even if you bake in, discount the market price 10%, you're buying it at that price. Even still, the principle remains, no matter if it's minus 10% or whatever. The principle still remains that I am choosing effectively to purchase the card at that price rather than sell it. So that's the one situation where there's conflicting signals where, I'm not bidding on it at auction, but I have a copy of it that I'm not selling, even once a new market price is realized, I'm still not selling it. So I'm signaling two things. I'm signaling I don't want another copy of it. So I think maybe the second copy, from my point of view, a second copy added to my collection would be overpriced at that price. But a first copy is not overpriced. I would rather keep my copy at the market price and sell it. So there, I'm indicating that it's not overpriced. And then this is like the final wrinkle here. So then, just like every card that sells is sort of by definition overpriced to everybody except the person who won it, well, every card that's in a collection somewhere is also seen as underpriced. Because if it were seen as properly priced or overvalued, then everybody who holds those cards in their collections would sell it. So in the same way that every price that gets realized in the market setting is overpriced to everybody else, every card that everybody else owns in their collection, they see as underpriced or as undervalued. So every card is overvalued and undervalued. How about that? That's how we're going to conclude that section. And then two final points here. Here's the penultimate topic. Would collecting be better if you were the only collector in the world? So this is also a spinoff of something that Josh and I were talking about on Crossover that I was thinking about further, which is, I kind of had this bit about, do we always want to try to grow the hobby? There's this other point of view, this collector-centric point of view that says, I don't know if I want even more people to come into this hobby. There's a ton of people in here now. I've got a ton of friends in this hobby. It's really great. The more people that come in, the more competitive things get. The more competitive things get on the market side, the harder it is, the more expensive it is for me to get the cards I want for my collection. So so then it kind of leads to this other extreme, which is that, well, if you don't want more people to come in, what if you wanted less people to come in? What if you wanted people to leave so you can get the cards that you want for cheaper? And then let's take that all the way to its extreme. What if you wanted everybody to leave so that you are the only collector left? What if you were the only collector left in the world? And so I found this little image of Robinson Caruso for this particular portion of the episode. What if you were the only collector in the world? What if you were the Robinson Crusoe? You're stranded on this island of collecting and there is nobody else with you. Would that be the ultimate collector scenario? Now you have so just assume that Panini and Topps are continuing to make cards and nobody else wants to buy them, so they're effectively you have zero competition on the market for these cards. You can go buy any card you want for dirt cheap anytime. You can get all the best cards, but that's because you are the only collector. Nobody else is collecting this stuff. Nobody wants this stuff. Nobody cares about this stuff. It's just you. Is that a collector utopia? Is that an end state that's desirable, is to be the Robinson Crusoe of collectors stranded on the collecting desert island? And I don't think it is. I think that the market and the community and the competition and the events and the gathering and the socializing and the interacting and the friendships and the relationships and the common interests and the bonds that arise from them are so important to the human dimension of collecting. And I think this thought experiment sort of shows that the extreme of, hey, I get all the cards and I have no competition, that's not really what we want as collectors either. What we want as collectors is on a human level, on a basic level, on a level of connecting with each other, on a level of giving meaning to life, on the level of motivation to take action and to have the ability to socialize with people over things we have in common and to form bonds and relationships and all of the human elements, the elements that give vibrancy to life. Those wouldn't be possible if we were the only collector, if we were the only person in this hobby. And on the flip side, the more people that are involved in the hobby and the more people that contribute to the hobby, the more chances we have to build meaning through relating to and competing with and enjoying the company of other people who have this card collecting thing in common with us. But by the same token, we don't want the other extreme either, which is everybody on the face of the earth is collecting cards and the competition for them is just enormous, and we lose the ability to be able to afford any of the cards that we want. So there's some medium here, there's some in between. But that thought experiment really sort of reinforced to me the idea that there's something validating, there's something human, there's something social, there's that desire, that altruistic desire to sacrifice a little something to belong to the group, that comes along with permitting others to compete with us for cards, because the trade-off is that we get to be part of a group and we get to have this human connection with other collectors. And finally, final topic of today's show, there was a really cool tweet that was put out by the DNVR podcast Twitter account late last night, actually, which was showing highlights from Nikola Jokic's Summer League debut. And the first highlight, actually, that they showed was the photo that got used on Jokic's Prizm base card from his 2015-16 NBA rookie season. And it reminded me of this video that Card Insights 2 once made, which I'm showing on the screen right now, which crops together that footage from his game, which we're seeing right now. He sort of does a little spin, half of a spin move, and then like a little pump fake, which leads to an up and under, which leads to a finger roll at the basket. And mid-finger roll, the camera freezes from the point of view of underneath the basket, and it captures Jokic flicking the ball up, and the ball went in. Now, I couldn't find if that was the first basket that Jokic had ever scored, that in an NBA uniform during that Summer League debut. It looked like it might have been, just based on the sequence of the highlight reel. That was the first thing that appeared, but it might not be too. But anyway, I thought it was cool that it was this Prizm base photo that DNVR just happened to post, and it reminded me of this amazing mashup, or rather this edit or whatever that Card Insights did. So that's going to do it for the Chris HOJ-cast. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys sooner or later for episode 7.